Hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Anderson, founder of Clarinet Mentors, and today I want to talk about clarinet ligatures. That's the piece that holds the reed onto our mouthpiece. I'm going to start with just some really simple basics, kind of the best way to set up your ligature so your clarinet plays well. And after that brief introduction, I'm going to talk about some of the different brands and types and styles of ligatures out there, maybe to give you an idea of what you might want to look for if you want to upgrade your ligature to a better quality one, and how that might affect your sound. So most of us have something that holds our reed on. They can be very fancy looking, like this one here, or they can be just a fairly basic piece of metal. And ligatures come in many different types of material. Most of them are metal. A lot of them have a rubber or a leather piece that holds the reed on, and some of them are made out of string or materials that are like string. Basically, the ligature's job is to hold the reed in place so that it can freely vibrate against the mouthpiece, and it has to be tight enough so that we don't get air leaking out the sides here. Sometimes we call the side of the reed the rail, and we don't want air leaking out the sides. If it does leak out of the sides, you're going to find it feels a little bit challenging to blow, and it's almost like your reed is too stiff. So it has to hold it on enough to do that. On the other hand, if the reed is really clamped tightly onto the ligature, it will not vibrate as well, and sometimes that can affect how easily the tone comes out and what kind of sound you get. So I think ligature manufacturers are always striving to hold the reed on as little as possible, enough that it's secure, but so that it still has maximum resonance. And to do that, they experiment with all kinds of materials and all kinds of designs. However, if you're pretty new to the clarinet and you might be wondering, well, how do I get my ligature set up? Here's a couple things to look for. Most beginner ligatures are metal with 2 screws, like the one I'm holding up to the camera here. And these ones are designed to have the screw in front. The way you can tell is if you're facing the reed, as you're facing my reed right now, the screws always go to the right. So in this case, I can tell the screws are on the same side of my mouthpiece as the reed. If I contrast that to this next ligature, which I'm going to put on, which is also metal with 2 screws, in order to have the screws on the right, they need to be flipped around to the back of the mouthpiece, and that's called an inverted ligature. The theory with inverted ones is it takes some of the weight off the front of the reed and allows it to vibrate better. And in my experience, many of the better designed ligatures do have the screw on the back for that reason. But I'll go back to this one, which looks a lot like a basic one that you might find with your first clarinet that you buy or rent. So as a general guideline, many mouthpieces actually do have guidelines that you slip the ligature between as far as how high or how low you put it. And moving it up or down does impact how the reed vibrates. In general, and you can experiment with moving it around, but in general you want to have it low enough so that the curve that we often see cut into the bottom of the reed is completely showing. If your ligature's up too high, you're more likely to be choking the sound off a little bit. So low enough that you can completely see the line where the shiny bark on the reed ends and the cut into the reed starts. The top ligature screw, I recommend having it just tightly enough that it doesn't wiggle around. That still gives some flex to the reed so you're not choking it. The bottom one could be a little bit firmer. And again, you can experiment if you turn it tighter or looser. What do you hear on your mouthpiece and your reeds? But that's a general guideline for you. So I want to talk about some of the different types of ligature designs and why you might want to consider upgrading your ligature. I will say when it comes to clarinet equipment and how it affects our sound, probably if you are just starting out with the most basic kind of student level instrument that you got right out of the case, the first piece of gear you should consider upgrading is your mouthpiece, because that really does make more of a difference than your ligature. And I have other videos on clarinet mouthpieces and how you might go about choosing them. But upgrading your ligature also will improve the sound. Maybe not as dramatically as a different mouthpiece will, but once you have a mouthpiece that you really like, finding a ligature that works well with your setup might just give you a more open, more warm, more resonant, more flexible tone. And that's usually what we're looking for. And in my experience, all these different types of ligatures just have slightly different tone qualities. And some players will deliberately use one mouthpiece for a jazz style of playing. Maybe they want one that's a little louder and a little more flexible, and they might use a different ligature for a very dark, pure Brahms classical sound. So there's no right or wrong answer here, but I'll just tell you about some of the ones that I really like. So if you're looking for kind of a not too expensive upgrade, I highly recommend the Bonade Inverted Ligature. The way this works, I'm going to zoom my camera up here. You can see that there's two thin little rails inside of there. You can almost see them, two little metal strips. And those metal strips run vertically through the front of the ligature so that when I put the ligature on, those two narrow rails that are inside of here are really the only thing touching the reed. So we're minimizing how much the reed is held on, and the screws are at the back. This one is a good price. They're not super expensive. And when I first started a hunt for a new ligature, on my setup, this is actually one of the best ligatures. There's lots of great ligatures out there that I would recommend, but just on my particular setup, this one works especially well. And I do recommend it to a lot of my students. Now you notice I'm stressing on my setup. And here's what I've noticed. Every player has a different kind of mouthpiece. If they have a wooden clarinet, the wood resonates differently from instrument to instrument. There's no one ligature that's going to be perfect for everybody. Everyone's setup is a bit different. So if you were really trying to find the ultimate best ligature for you, you'd have to sit down and play through a whole bunch of them, because the one that works best for me might not be the best for you. What I can say though is the ones I'm going to be recommending today are all very good. And if you don't have the luxury of sitting down and playing through things, any one of these would definitely be an upgrade from the basic 2-screw front screw that comes with most clarinets. So the Bonade Inverted is a very nice one. There are lots of other ones that work on that principle of having just a small thing that sets on the reed. Here's one by BG that also has in it just a little strip in the middle here, and that ends up being two little pieces of this kind of rubber plastic that sits on the reed. And again, once we put it on the mouthpiece, we have one big screw at the back. That's a nice one to use. Very similar to those, there's a company called Rovner that makes lots of these flexible ligatures. Many of them are leather or rubber, things like that. And again, one big screw. And I know lots of people who really like the Rovner ligatures. Again, the screw goes in the back. They're very flexible in sound. In general, they create quite a nice, warm, vibrant sound. And a lot of my friends who play jazz, in particular, really like using the Rovner ligatures. Now, you'll find ligatures come in many different designs. Here's a kind of wild-looking one. This is a bass clarinet ligature, so it looks a little large. But on this one, this is one of the few one-screw ones where the screw actually goes on the side of the reed. But again, it just pushes this little plate that only touches the reed in a small bit. And I actually find this is quite a nice ligature. I think it's called a Franz Louis. And nice bass clarinet one. A lot of saxophone players use these ligatures as well. Now, I don't have all the ligatures that I like in front of me here. The Vandoren Optimum ligature is another ligature that has the screw in the back, an inverted ligature. And it has a variety of plates you can insert that touch the reed, and each one has a different character. They're very good ligatures. Many of my colleagues use that, and that's definitely one to check out. BG also has a metal one with one screw in the back that comes in gold or silver. I really like that one. It was a little bit too bright for my setup, but I have students who use it, and it sounds phenomenal on their instrument. So a good one to consider. So I have to say, for myself, my current favorite, which I encourage you to test out if you have a chance, is made by Silverstein. And it's a really unusual looking ligature. It's based upon the string ligatures, but this material that they use is actually very, very strong. I don't even know what it's made out of. I should find out. In fact, I'll interview the Silverstein guys. But it's sort of a Teflon coated wire or something. It does the same thing as string, but it's much sturdier, and it won't It won't stretch and lose its shape over the years as string often does. And again, it's held on with one string. It has these little metal straps that you can push forward or backwards, and that affects the brightness or darkness of the tone. So theoretically, you could alter the ligature depending on what style of music you're playing. But I have to say, I love this ligature. I just picked it up and I'm very impressed with the tone quality of it. Now, this is one of the more expensive ligatures on the market, but if you're passionate about clarinet and you want to try a gadget that really works, I recommend it. So I'm going to put in the description underneath this video a list of some of these ligatures so that you don't have to remember it all or try and write it down. You can just download a PDF form and that'll make it easier for you. And I'd love to hear from you. I did ask the Clarinet Mentors community at large for suggestions on ligatures, and I got many suggestions, many of which I just showed you in this video. So I'll encourage you to find the one that works well for you, but feel free to write your preferences in the comments under this video. I look at those about twice a week and I'll answer your questions, and other people will be curious to see what your recommendation might be. And I have an invitation for you. If you're not officially part of my Clarinet Mentors community, I want to invite you to join. It's absolutely free. You just go to www.learnclarinetnow.com. And there's a little sheet, fill in your name, email address, and once you join my community, you'll have access to lots of videos like this. And about every 2 weeks, I send out a newsletter with an educational video, like the one you're watching now. I'll also let you know about other special clarinet events that happen. Sometimes they're online interviews, online lessons, and things that really only people in the Clarinet Mentors community find out about. So I'd love to have you join. If it's not a good fit for you, you can unjoin very, very easily. So thank you for watching today's video on ligatures. I'm curious to hear your comments, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Clarinet Mentors video.